How's it going, guys? It's been a long time. I really don't have any excuse except for the fact that life has been extremely financially constrained the last number of months, and I've been doing what I can to get my head back in the game. But the reality is I've been so stressed it's been hard for me to focus. So I'm doing everything I can to redouble my efforts to get back to this, because truth is time's not getting any shorter. That grand test, the conflagration we're looking at around the corner, the tribulation itself, is not getting farther away. So I need to be consistent with this. Please forgive me. I hope you all are still growing, learning, reading, and readying yourself for whatever may befall you here shortly around the corner. That being said, I've tried my best to keep up on my own studies. Recently, the group and I have gone through the tribulational series once again, and it struck me when I was looking back through my videos that I haven't done an in-depth explanatory informational video specifically about the four horsemen. I did address them in broad strokes, but not individually. So as a background, in Revelation 5, 6, and 7, we have a scene of basically a shifting of the way the heavenly scene is being performed. John literally says these angels are singing a new song. We see a new series of worships that essentially represent an inaugural celebration, if you will, of the events of the tribulation about to begin. And then we see the Lamb being handed the scroll, and him having the ability to break off these seals because he's the one who won the victory. He's the conquering King of Kings, and he's the only one who has the right to remove these seals according to the plan of the Father. So as he's removing these seals, we're getting a picture, and in fact one of the cherubim, one of the four living creatures as they're called, circling the throne or being a part of the throne or moving the throne, whatever position that they're in at that point, one of them is stopping and talking to John and giving him an explanation as to what these horses are. And a really commonly misunderstood element of these verses is the fact that, some like to see the words of the angel as having to be addressed towards the horses. Unfortunately, we don't see any change in the direction of the discourse in the original Greek. What that means is the angel is specifically talking to John. He's not telling the horse to come. He's telling John to come and see, because shortly thereafter, right after, in fact, those words are spoken in the book, it says, I looked and behold, and then it goes into a long description of whatever this particular horseman is. Let's talk about the first one, because that is the one that is essentially the first domino to fall that leads to the other horsemen coming about and the resultant situation on the ground that occurs because of these trends. And they are trends. They are not actual events on the ground. We have no indication anywhere in Revelation that there's any sign that the earth is even aware that these things are going on, let alone anything actively on the ground occurring related to those events in heaven. So this is literally just the inaugural scene where we're getting a preview of the tribulation, and the very first horse that comes up happens to be a white horse. I have a little bit of a tidbit here that I'd like to read from Ichthus.com that explains in relatively few words what this actually means. So let's talk about it. The white horse, it represents Antichrist's conquests and his sales pitch, if you will, to the world. Here's Revelation 6, 1 through 2. And I saw when the Lamb opened one, that is the first of the seven seals, and I heard one of the four living creatures saying with a loud voice like thunder, come and see. That's a transliteration, by the way. It only literally says come, but it's quite clear. He's saying come and see, because right thereafter, and I looked, and behold, there was a white horse, and the one sitting on it had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he went out conquering, and did conquer. Check this out. The white horse symbolizes the trend of military aggression by Antichrist and his forces. As the Roman color of victory, white, therefore, white is most appropriate for representing the successful conquests of Antichrist, the coming ruler of revived Rome. This is the first major tribulational trend wherein Antichrist's initial territorial expansion is accomplished both by overt military means and also through deceit, subterfuge, and guerrilla tactics. The symbolism behind the bow, on which we will talk about here in just a second. This trend, and indeed the arrival and unveiling of Antichrist, could not happen without the opening of this seal of spirit restraint. 2 Thessalonians 2, 1 through 8 goes over that. It is important to understand that the rider on the white horse is not Christ, but Antichrist. As his name implies, Antichrist is a pseudo-Christ or a fake Christ. In many respects, a diabolically deliberate counterfeit who will deceive many. That the representation of him and the trend he represents at the beginning of the tribulation should bear some resemblance to our conquering Lord is therefore quite understandable. Antichrist wears a crown, but his is an athletic wreath. In the Greek, it literally is called a stephanos. It's the one made out of, I believe, olive branches. I could be wrong, though. Inferior in both quality and quantity to the multiple royal diadems, which is a royal golden crown, warned by the Messiah, shown in Revelation many different times. Antichrist comes forth at the very beginning of the tribulation to conquer a kingdom which will not endure, the first seal, whereas the Messiah returns at its end to win a victory and a kingdom which will know no end at the second advent. Antichrist is given a bow, a weapon whose biblical and historical connotations are often ignoble, less than honorable, in other words. That is to say, the bow is much more of a guerrilla-type weapon in the ancient world, a weapon of stealth rather than one of bold confrontation. And we contrast this to the impressive broadsword proceeding directly from the Messiah's mouth, in a direct, forthright, and in-your-face kind of way. And this distinction would not have been lost on John's contemporaries, those who were alive at the time of writing. The employment of horse archers by the Scythians and the Parthians of that day, while effective, was outside the paradigm of Greco-Roman fair play, and would most definitely have had a negative connotation for the original readers of Revelation. They saw it as dishonorable. This aspect of Antichrist's weaponry is consistent with Daniel's account of Antichrist's insidious and devious rise to power, accomplished as much through terrorism, coup d'etat, and intimidation as through overt military conquests. And in Ezekiel's description of the tribulational invasion of Israel prior to Armageddon, Antichrist, under the generic Gentile name Gog, is also described as carrying a bow. Here is Ezekiel 39, 1-3. And you, son of man, prophesy against Gog and say, Thus says the Lord God, Behold, I am against you, Gog, Antichrist, chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. I will fetch you back and conduct you and bring you up from the far reaches of the north. He's called the king of the north in Daniel, by the way. For I will make you come to the mountains of Israel, then I will strike your bow from your left hand, and make your arrows fall from your right hand. A perfect picture of his utter defeat at the hands of the actual Messiah. Finally, none of the positive elements we find in the descriptions of our Lord, his fiery eyes, impressive white robe, majestic names, etc., which we see in Revelation 1:19 and a few other places, are to be found in this description of the conquering Antichrist. He has none of these things. Just as this symbol gives an outward appearance of majesty at first, but upon closer inspection proves hollow, so it is with Antichrist, who will demand and receive worship from an awestruck world, but will in turn only lead his followers to their complete destruction. Now, one thing that is highly misunderstood about the actions of Antichrist, and I've gone over this in very, very, very great detail in previous videos, is the fact that Antichrist has a nemesis, an arch nemesis, in fact, that is given to him to war against. The way that we see the world scene shaping up, if you will, for this end times, I don't even know what to call it, competition between the two. It's really not even a competition in the truest sense, because what Daniel is saying is that the king of the south was always set to be the fall guy for Antichrist. So in other words, the world is going to be offered an arch nemesis, the West specifically, because that's where the Antichrist comes from. He rules over Europe. He comes originally from Babylon, which, spoilers if you don't already know, the only place that Babylon, Mystery Babylon of Revelation could be is the United States. So very soon, this war on terror that's been going on for 30, 40 years, whatever it is now, it is all contrived. If you look into the history of it, the reality is many of our leaders over the past decades have supported these people surreptitiously behind the scenes, specifically so as to, elevate an enemy, so as to take the eye off of Antichrist and put it onto a ostensible, only surface level, seemingly obvious Antichrist, which the actual Antichrist will go to war with. So you can also see how this leads into the civil discourse of this, the lack of proper civil discourse brought on by the red horse that I'm going to talk about here in the next video. But the reality is, once he goes to war with the king of the south, who is Islamic, Muslim, the Muslim counterpart of his peoples over in the Middle East in our nations are going to foment one heck of an uprising. It's the only way I can see it, considering the fact that that red horse has everything to do with internecine civil strife. Basically, the picture is states going against one another, not each other. So the fact that he goes to war with the South and the red horse follows thereafter makes absolute sense, but I'll get into that in the next one so that you can have a more specific, detailed, and zeroed in bit of information about that particular horse and the following two thereafter as well. So leave a comment down below. Most people are, to be honest with you, I've heard so many strange interpretations of what these verses could possibly mean that I don't think people are able or willing to accept the fact that on its face, the only person that it could be and the only conquest that it could represent are those of the anti-Messiah, not the actual Lord himself. And so to understand these things, you can clearly see how the actions that he starts in that war leads to the civil discord, strife, if you will. Eventually, all of the overspending on the war will cause price to skyrocket. And then you can see how a situation where war, strife, and finances are constraining the worldwide population, how that would lead to, well, the green horse, the extreme increase in mortality. But again, I will get into those in the next videos so you guys have a point of reference later, perhaps something to share with your friends. But let me know what you think. I'm praying for all of you. I hope you're praying for me. I'm trying to get back at this, like I said. Truth is, we all need to do what Hebrews says and spend a season allowing what little punishments we may have to correct us and correct our thinking and correct our behavior to come. And we have to accept them, and we have to take them on the chin and do the right thing. And none of us is innocent. So hopefully you guys are sticking with it, getting ready, having the right attitude. And yeah, we'll talk to you soon.